One, you are live.
Are we live? Are we live? It's always my favorite thing to say. Yes.
Hello, Internet.
Yeah, welcome to the Westminster Variety Show with my trusty sidekick, Kelly, Agent 137 Ross, and today's guest, Keith Harris, otherwise known as DJ Deckard.
Deckard.
How are you guys doing? Nice to be on.
Awesome, man. Hey, real quick announcement, Game on Tour kickoff party at Monarch in San Francisco, Friday night. That's going on. And then, let's see, another event, Game on Tour, Vancouver. Woohoo! November 11th coming up. And we're just getting into promoting that. That'll be awesome. Look out for other swag and stuff. But we got to take care of business Friday night in San Francisco first.
I want a pair of glasses, please.
One of my favorite places on the planet to visit and DJ. So excited. Shout out to Jenny Shu, DJ Shui, for helping me get all that together.
And Monarch.
Among everything else, she helps me get together.
Have you played at Monarch before?
I have not.
You have not. It's going to be a rockin', sweaty basement. So it'll be going off. You're gonna love it.
Sounds like my kind of party, man. Awesome.
Yeah.
What do you got coming up, Keith? Anything you got coming up? Anything you want to tell about?
Ghost Ship coming up, playing Friday the 28th at Pier 70 in San Francisco, along with I'm the lone cowboy on Friday night, but also along with Dirty Bird and Zach Moore and Brass Tacks and a bunch of other peeps. And Saturday night, 2-day event. The rest of the Space Cowboys play on Saturday night. And not much after that.
That's a pretty big deal, isn't it? That party is like a big Halloweenish thing in San Francisco. Is that right?
It's a big warehousey three stages plus 2 silent disco. So yeah, it's a big one.
That's five total.
Five total concurrent.
Yeah.
DJs or bands playing. Mostly DJs, but there's some other bands as well. They mix it up a little bit.
Interesting. Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Let's see what else is happening. Swagtoberfest is in full effect. If you send us something of yours, we will send you something of ours. Go check it out. juicerecordings.com/swagtoberfest. You can learn all about that.
You mean like could I send you something from my bag of stickers over here? Like
you can send us absolutely anything. In fact, on that page, we even have a link to like all of, like, if you're fresh out of ideas, we even have a link to all of our not all, but like at least our key logos, some of the artwork from some music covers, things like that. You could take that, you could screen print a shirt, you could print a sticker, you could, whatever you want to do.
All right, I like it. Here's a maybe you know this one. Is that right? Yeah.
It's
Freakazoids.
Right.
Well, Freakazoids from Lee Coombs.
Yeah.
Yeah, a little in Nuts We Trust, our good friends, Burning Man. Yeah, I won't go through them all, but yeah, I got some good ones over here.
Yeah, you could send us someone else's stuff if you don't have any.
I run into this problem of being a like not exactly compulsive, but when I see certain things that I like, like say some of your swag perhaps, or even the Space Cowboys own stuff we make. I end up going like, oh, great. Like I want to find the perfect place to put it, and then half the time it ends up sitting in a sealed bag because I don't, like, where do I put it where I don't want it to get ruined.
I hear you, man. I got stickers, like they've been stickers and patches, and I really like patches, but I was collecting them. I still have another like 5 or 10 maybe that, like, I finally started sewing them on my vest for Burning Man.
Right.
And you might have seen that, yeah, because I had some Cowboys ones on there because they were fresh from this year. And but anyway, that and stickers. Yeah, there's like, I just finally started sticking the stickers everywhere in the studio. So now they're like, I wouldn't say everything's covered with them, but we're making some serious progress in this place with stickers all over.
Yeah, I think that's the right approach. I think I just need to don't hold on to it. Just get it out there, put it on things.
Yeah. So stuff like that. But I think that, Kelly, did I miss anything that's important in terms of announcements, events, things like that?
Yeah, the Fort Knox 5 release just came out, or the re-release.
Yeah, well, so you talked about before a remix I did for Lady Wax. I didn't know the actual, like, her crew is In Beat We Trust, you know, but I didn't know that was the name of the actual song, because when I got the samples, there was no song name. It was just like the stems to this track. And I was like, well, I really like the track. And so I called it something else completely. So that's what I was calling it to anybody that I had sent it to. And then it comes out and someone's like, hey, really dig your In Beat We Trust remix. And I'm like, huh?
I think I was talking about it for weeks and you're like, what?
I wasn't connecting the dots because I was calling it something like, I don't know, Come As You Are. Or it had some hook in it that the vocal hook is in there. But that's weeks ago. But yes, the Fort Knox 5 thing is out. Go if you're listening and you know you're already a Fort Knox 5 fan, which is highly likely, awesome music over the years. They just released their 100th release on Fort Knox Recordings, and so it is a remix. I think it's 15, maybe 20 remixes of their last full original album, which was Pressurize the Cabin. So it's the 100th release, Pressurize the Cabin remixes. Go support those folks. They're awesome. Steve Raskin, queued up, our good but no longer with us friend John H. and Mustafa, the rest of the crew. Those guys do awesome things, so go check it out. I think that's all I got for announcements.
Good job.
Sweet. Keith, I always forget. So you've been a very accommodating guest to sort of back and forth and help me get through the first 5 minutes.
Sure.
Of that. We don't have any sponsors, but if we did, it would be Juice Recordings, and it would probably be my good friend Sumo Fish. This shirt, you see me wearing these things a lot. This style. He also does the covers for my album art. Not all the releases, but the album things. So the Game on Tour, all that artwork, he did all that stuff. So talented dude. Which brings us to Keith and. Aren't there some debates? There's some other show going on live right now, isn't there?
It was, it was entertaining on my way home. I Ubered home, and the driver asked me, he said, "Do you mind if we listen to the debate?" And I'm like, no, go right ahead, it's fine. And I just, again, it's like listening to SNL in the car. I'm just like, this can't possibly be real. Like I can't. Let's silent that. I can't even like believe what I'm watching and seeing. Our system has come to this. I
heard somebody say, "Yeah, I agree," and I heard somebody, I don't know where it was, some podcast or something I was listening to. They were like, the biggest beneficiary of this whole thing is Alec Baldwin, who gets like a 1-year, $25 million deal to play Trump on SNL.
Yeah, that's true.
Well, I think, I'm still, I'm not convinced that Donald was in it to win it from the beginning, but I do think that that he's going to take full advantage afterwards, So like whether it's Donald TV or whatever, that he'll turn it to himself in a big way, I'm sure.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, he was gonna, whether he won or lost, he's gonna give Oprah a run for her money, right? So
exactly. Yeah.
She's probably about as full of herself as he is. She just didn't run for president. That's the only difference. So
that would have been an interesting a third party option, right? If Oprah said, "All right, well, if he can do it, well, I'm doing it too."
I think she would have I think she would stand a much better chance of actually getting elected. But and probably a bit less narcissistic, a bit,
or at least just on paper.
Or at least
in the televised eye, she seems to be a bit.
I mean, she is a woman who put or as I forget who said it or whatever, but it was like, "Congratulations, Oprah, you've been on the cover of O magazine for like eight straight years."
Yeah. I mean,
how many selfies can you do?
like I said, daytime TV, man. I'm not gonna give her too much credit, just a little bit more than that other.
Yeah. Agreed.
Yeah, I don't think he was necessarily in it to win it. I do think if there's anything I think he genuinely wanted to do, even if completely self-serving, I genuinely do think he wanted to shake up people's way of looking at what's going on. And I don't think that was for any noble cause other than to benefit himself. But I do think that, with some shaking up, there'd certainly be more ways for folks, like him or in his bracket to make even more money.
He's certainly shaking it up.
Yeah.
I don't think Trump has ever been accused of being in favor of the little guy.
No, that I don't think is but hey, we're giving them a run for their money tonight. The only piece I saw of it was when I walked in to get my Synergy tea. Hey, take notes, Synergy. Maybe they can sponsor.
Potential sponsors, take note.
Gingerade, this was not planned.
Tap water.
Tap water. This has water in it.
What do you got, Kelly?
This is kombucha gingerade, but it is just actually water.
Hey, beverage makers have pretty good margins, so come on, people, throw some dollars. Hey,
water.
Almost equally as large as the debates, and certainly probably larger for the thousands of people watching us, is got to be the fact that there's yet another version of the Mac OS out recently, and that gets Facebook flurried with questions about, do I upgrade or not? And that's going to take us right into our discussion about DJ Workflow.
I did not think of that one, but I did encounter that recently because being on Tractor S4 as my main setup. I'm trying to think, actually. I did update. I not only did I update, I kind of updated without actually doing a whole bunch of research, but I did wait until they had a couple like quick bug fixes, and then I'm like, all right, I'll do it. Yeah, how bad could it be? Thankfully, so far it's been okay on my end, but
yeah. So you and I think Kelly, I told you, but Keith and I got into a discussion somewhere in the middle of Burning Man about just all things to do with like DJ Workflow, and I think I brought up that I had gone out to do that event at the DJ Expo, and it was part of a panel that was talking about generally, DJ workflow-ish type issues. It was mostly like crate management, things like that, in the digital domain. But anyway, that got Keith and I talking. And I think the software, really, the software part of it, assuming you use a laptop at some point in your DJ workflow, I think that's probably one of the biggest things. Doesn't happen as often, like not every gig, but it's certainly one of those things, like with these updates, that is, I think most DJs, certainly professional DJs, or meaning anyone that's ever plays for money, in that sense, where there's this expectation of getting paid to perform, right? In that sense, you certainly have these freak out moments where it's like, okay, do I upgrade? When do I upgrade? Do I do this? So that was kind of your approach to it, Keith. I didn't do it yet for this one because I just have too many things on my, I have two machines. Maybe I'll start there.
I did that. I've got Yosemite on my desktop, and I just upgraded to Sierra. Well, I didn't upgrade, but I got a new laptop, so I had to have it.
So Keith, do you have one or two machines, or what's your setup as far as your stuff that music ends up on?
Is that me or Kelly?
You, Keith.
We can get into the horror stories later, but I have kind of shifted over the years. This is why I was so keen. When you said you gave a talk about it, my ears perked up, and I realized just how much of a geek I am. Because I'm like, oh, this is like, I would like nothing better than to like sit down and like just have this like really in-depth talk with other DJs and producers about the geekery, the nuts and bolts of where do you put your files? Do you do it locally and you back up? Do you, so to kind of, jump to that.
Well, we're going in. Oh, we're going in.
We're going in. So I had, over the years, I've had two laptops stolen. Both of them were my DJ laptops. I've used Apple laptops for all of them. Note to anyone else out there, if you have previously used a MacBook Pro and then switched to a MacBook Air, you're probably not going to enjoy it as much as, maybe somebody who, is maybe stuck with a lower performing machine. So that was one thing. I've had, it's interesting. So, so I have my Mac Air. I have an iMac at home desktop, and most of the time I've resorted to putting most everything music related, be it DJ songs or if I'm doing mixes or re-edits on songs or working on a production. I pretty much have just put everything on Dropbox so that I can always get to it, and I haven't seemed to have any issues, going back and forth, and for instance, having a 9-to-5 job, it's really nice. Like I handle the RIPEcast in that same way. And I just keep all the files, in a place that I can easily get to them on Dropbox. And, let's say I'm running late and I'm running out of time, I could be in my laptop on the road or at work or something and, pop it up, and still be able to get it done, from elsewhere, from not at home. That's the top, very top level view, of what I've been doing, and again using Curator.
Real quick, Kelly, what about how does yours compare to that?
Well, I was basically just using AirDrop for everything. As far as my laptop was concerned, I would go into the laptop, download everything in there, and then do everything AirDrop over to my desktop.
Yeah.
What? Yep, but I mean, Sierra, I haven't really had an issue with. So I think that what he's saying about Dropbox is probably the better way to do it, because you can only really do a file at a time. You can't really do a playlist or anything like that.
Yeah. I've done a few things. I mean, I guess Keith, I'm gonna kind of I'll give a response to your hierarchy that you're kind of going through and kind of how I've done some of it, and we can nerd out on the tech parts if you want. I've used Dropbox quite a bit. I at one point, because I have an iMac, a pretty beefy, decked out iMac 5K, that version. It's not the most recent, but it's pretty close.
Yeah.
It's stacked as far as the config goes, and that's my home base studio machine, that I have all of my full blown DAW and audio and everything full blown is on that machine. All my Adobe products that I do any of the video or design, videography, any of that with as well. So that's the monster. And then, for me, one of my biggest problems was I travel with MacBook Pro. So I think that's similar to you. And I like to use that to DJ off of. So where I got into the Dropbox thing was at one point I heard somebody I was off Reddit or somewhere, and they were like, oh, you could just put the whole entire iTunes library, in Dropbox, which I did. And aside from it taking a week, depending on your bandwidth. So mine is at 200 gigs. So aside from it taking a week for that whole entire library contents to do its thing and replicate in Dropbox. And then of course you end up with the library, local on, in my case, my iMac, the big studio machine workstation, and then it's in Dropbox, of course, in the ether, and then of course it's synced over to, in my case, my MacBook Pro as well. My MacBook Pro only has, I don't know what yours has, but I've got a terabyte, flash drive in mine. So that's the issue that presents the most problem for me, is that my studio machine is at 6 terabytes. My MacBook Pro is at 1.
Right. I started having to selectively. I used to sync a lot of stuff on Dropbox, and then I started limiting it down. And so if I used to just say, oh, I want my music production folder, I want all my DJs, I want all my DJ songs. I'll just take it all in, and then over the span of about a year, and doing other things on my laptop as well, and all of a sudden I start looking at my space and going, I think I got a message one time. I can't remember what it was I did. I don't know. I was I usually don't do a lot of non-music things on my laptop, but I was just kind of using it a little bit more at the time. Oh, I was probably, yeah, I had iMac actually, you know, I had to get it repaired. So anyway, long story short is Monday I get the message of like, you run out of memory. And I'm like, what?
Yeah.
And I just thought, wow, no, that's really bad. I can't do that, you know? So I kind of got undisciplined for a little while. And then,
it sounds like you were using like the selective sync options in Dropbox. Is that right?
well, I was doing two things. I was syncing a lot of things in Dropbox, and then separately, I was just, you know, I just started doing a bunch of other stuff on my computer, and I was getting a little careless about, you know, I wasn't being disciplined about my drive space. And then I, you know, once I got that message, I was like, all right, I gotta, you know, and I actually, you know, it's funny because when you and I talked about, you know, like that got me kind of thinking back on the whole workflow again, you know. You know, and also, you know, like I said, I've had some bad luck with electronics. My brother and some of my friends, I mean, I call me the Grim Reaper of electronics. If I can just show you part of my, these are all hard drives that I've owned, be it I've owned this in like, we're not close to done yet, by the way.
Oh my god!
You see all these? Like,
what do you do to them?
I also use. Well, I thought about maybe I should do some art project with them or something. I don't know. You know, the problem was the other part of this that I didn't mention was that in addition to Dropbox, I have a pretty beefy NAS, you know, network access storage. So I have something like, I don't know, I have 20 terabytes of storage or something on that thing.
Does it look like this?
Bigger, 8 bay.
This one's dead. I have three of these.
Yeah.
I have 3 of these, but this one's dead.
Yeah, it could go with my graveyard as well. So yeah, I also have that, which is great to have the multiple backup. The ironic thing is a lot of drive failures I've had have been while I've been trying to do the right thing, you know, meaning, oh, hey, I'm gonna like buy this new hardware so that I can like, you know, have another redundancy to data, you know, that I want, like my media collection or something. And it's actually been when I've been adding new gear or in the middle of a backup or something that I've actually had like a couple times I've had some failures. Also, just in general, Seagate drives, if you happen to Google like Apple Seagate recall, like, you know,
like that.
Yeah, that one. So I had not only that, I've had 2 hard drives in my iMac in the last 13 months completely die on me.
Like the internal?
Yes.
Wow.
It's a pain in the butt. Well, sorry, one was a recall, one just died.
I think, yeah, well, I'll tell you, I'll describe my external drives setup for my workstation, I guess, in a minute. I was going to ask you one thing before we left the topic of we'll just call them cloud-based file sync tools or file sync type tools. Have you used Google Drive at all for any of those types of you know, initiatives?
Not as much because I do have yeah, so I have Dropbox terabyte, I think I have, and I have a Google Drive that's smaller. I don't know what it is, 100 gigs or something.
Yeah.
I mostly just use that for kind of one-offs, you know. I don't know. Most of the time, I still use Dropbox for that just because it's easy, and you know, but it's there. But sometimes, like if I'm somewhere where I don't know, when would I not have Dropbox? I don't know, you know, just I guess it just when the mood strikes me. Sometimes I'll use a G Drive for one-off.
I use Dropbox for all of my what I call Wes Smith stuff, and then for the label for the juice recording stuff, we use Google Drive for all that. There's pros and cons to it, but specifically on the DJ workflow, I was going back to that because anybody who's interested in the wealth of information that we're throwing out there this hour, I would say that of those two, Dropbox to me seems to be the fastest and the most accurate in terms of those cloud-based sync tools. Drive, I tend to have a lot of problems with it, like the desktop client not necessarily either letting you know, like the indicator that it's syncing isn't always, like sometimes it's syncing, but it's not letting you know it's syncing, and then sometimes it just doesn't sync a folder, which it should because the file's new. Like it doesn't seem to just be, I don't know that those are bugs, but performance does not seem to be as reliable as Dropbox. And Drive doesn't seem to have as good of a, whatever they do to prioritize, file size versus quantity versus all that stuff. Dropbox seems to have really good algorithms for, if you've got 20 big video files or something that are, let's say a gig each or something loading, and then you go drop a single photo that you need to sync real quick, like it prioritizes and gets that photo synced quickly, and then it goes back to, doing the big work. And Drive doesn't seem to do that so much,
right?
Or as accurately. Anyway, those are just some points I was going to throw out there for anybody who's got one or the other.
We can. This might be an appropriate time to also, just talking about hard drive failures and all that stuff, and obviously, one of the big reasons for backups, not just like having your laptop stolen and all that, but it's something that I ran into before, which is a really, really painful experience. Was my first laptop that I used for organizing music and DJing. I probably had it for like 4 years or so, and I had done all of my Tractor music library organization on there. So at the time I had used both iTunes and Tractor. I would sort of import it into iTunes. I would rate the music. I would update the genre, and usually put keywords in all in iTunes. And then I would take those, after I did that, then I would bring it into Tractor. When my laptop got stolen, what had happened is I had all my music on Dropbox, but then I would import it to my laptop. And what I didn't do, I didn't think about this through all the way in terms of the workflow, because when my laptop got stolen, then what ended up happening was I had the music still that I had been accumulating, but none of the metadata. Because I wasn't, Dropbox was still like a quote unquote a clean version of the file. I hadn't, some of the things that, I had brought up with you guys, before this, was, things like, do you use mixed in key, or do you rename your songs, all that stuff.
Yeah.
I was left in this state where the reason why it's a big deal to me, now is that I literally lost, years worth of keywords and genre tagging, and, those tracks that, when you've gone through 4,000 tracks and you've keyworded, your secret weapons, your, whatever, so losing that was extremely painful. I still have the music, but to this day, I still, haven't fully gone through, like, it hurts to be at a gig or something and go, what's that track? I don't know, because I forgot to keyword it properly, and I don't remember. It's like having a vinyl that all is that it had like, it was a black label and white text, and there was like a picture, of a sumo wrestler or something, and you're just like, I don't know how to find that unless I flip through all my records, and so that's kind of what I was left with with my laptop. So back up your Tractor library as well to Dropbox, or put it in.
I saw some of your notes on that stuff. We'll dig into it even some more. On that note, I guess one of the things kind of still centering around the backup piece. I mean, I think that, I wanted to definitely talk about all the different software that might get used in terms of the various things that you do in your naming or renaming. You mentioned a couple things already. One of the ones that is not really music software, but I use quite a bit. I use this. I mentioned that I had for a while had my iTunes library, just in Dropbox,
Yeah.
And I took it out, so I don't do that anymore. And the reason was because, if you wanted to move it around, it takes forever. So I use a little application now called they just changed the name of it. It used to be called BT Sync, like like BT, almost like the musician BT Sync. Now it's called Resilio, same company, but Resilio, RESILIO, and it's a peer-to-peer sync tool. It costs a little bit of money, but it's pretty low. It's like $20 a year or something like that for the pro license, and it does not it doesn't store it anywhere, quote unquote, in the cloud or remote like Dropbox or Drive or any of those types of applications. It's a peer-to-peer deal, so it only goes from my iMac straight to my MacBook Pro, for example. And I found that it's not great for everything. It's not a replacement for Dropbox for a lot of the things that we talked about that are good about Dropbox, but particularly I've found with syncing that iTunes library, which in my case is, like I said, over 200 gig. So I've found it's extremely quick and very accurate at making sure, because it's syncing the whole directory of the iTunes library. So it gets everything, and you can point it to other files. Like you were mentioning with Tractor, for example, how there's a Tractor library file and like other things that aren't just, maybe that obvious. So that's where I believe these types of peer-to-peer sync tools come in maybe more handy. And the other big advantage with something like this Resilio Sync is that you can map different drives and different directories from two different machines of the same stuff. So you can't do that with Dropbox. Like Dropbox, whatever you put in there, every machine sees it as the same, path, like file path. Whereas with something like this Resilio Sync, I can have it in a path on my external drive, which might be whatever the name of that is, // folder structure. And then over on my MacBook Pro, completely different directory, and it takes care of it all in terms of just syncing like that. So that's definitely a bit deep dive nerdish on the file folder path management stuff. But for anybody,
that's a good tip though, because I've actually used BT Sync before.
Cool.
But I hadn't. It's funny, I hadn't used it I hadn't thought about using it in this context. So I had just used it. My brother, he's kind of a geek too, and not as much on the music side, but he just liked the idea of being able to take important documents and that he maybe wouldn't want on Dropbox or something, but be able to thank you. Be able to relatively easily, in a secure way, put them somewhere, offsite, whatever, something like that. So that's what he.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's probably what its roots were, but it just so happens that I found it in looking for file sync, peer-to-peer things that didn't have to go through a cloud service type deal, and the price was a little bit lower. But of course, now I end up using all of them, so I'm paying for all of them anyway.
That's part of the problem too. Is you start accumulating, and then you just start like, well, I like that tool. Yeah, okay, it's worth it. It's worth. I'll upgrade again, or I'll do this. And
Well, and the way I ended up finding that thing, actually, I was content with iTunes being in Dropbox, but because iTunes can understand the path difference. But what can't understand the path difference is plugins for Ableton, for example.
Yeah.
So they have to be where they are, right? Like they have to reside in certain, library locations where they get defined, and then that's kind of how they work. Some of them are pretty flexible, but then, there are a few out there still that are in my, what I would say a little bit old school in the licensing method and stuff. And so, they get stuck in a certain place or wherever. And so that tool makes it pretty cool to be able to, essentially, sync those individual places, and then you can retain the path integrity. And you can't do that with Dropbox. So you would never be able to put all of your plugins, in Dropbox, and it won't work like that.
Right.
Yeah.
So
at least not to my knowledge. But anyway, back to the DJ part.
Yeah, well, I was curious. I don't know if it was changing the topic, but yeah, I am curious about just sort of your guys' flow of on the DJing side when you're ingesting music, when you're where do you guys find? I found over the years that my where I think the hot place to get music from changes. and I think it's probably more about me than the external sources. I still think Beatport has a ton of good music, and especially if you kind of do the deep digging. Then I started really, for a while, I didn't really get too heavy into the blog scene, but I found that by following people on SoundCloud and then looking to see what it is that they like and who they follow, so I do the, follow DJs and producers that I care about. And, and a lot of times, you sort of find yourself every once in a while, like hopping on this like island that feels like a new niche of music, and you're like, oh, this guy knows this guy and this guy knows this guy. And, some of the, Wes, some of the music that I, played at the Get Low party at, when we were out there at Burning Man, I thought it was interesting because they were kind of new guys to me, relatively speaking, like Yo Speed and I'm spacing on a couple other names, but I thought it was interesting when I, posted my mix and mentioned them and stuff. And then I find out that, oh, well, those guys are like Spanish breaks guys, and so it's sort of like, oh, I didn't know that there was this whole other little scene or something, but just organically kind of came across a certain sound, and it makes sense that those guys know each other, so I'm kind of curious with you guys, and then from there, we can jump into the geeky side again. But I'm just kind of curious because I find that I go where my passion is versus like, just buying tunes, so I end up, the longer I DJ, I buy music that I buy or download music that I like versus for a gig necessarily. How about you guys?
Agent 137, what's your word on that topic?
Well, it depends because I play a lot of drum and bass, and I also play some house and break. So I do what you do as well for SoundCloud, is kind of do a deep dive, and I like usually maybe on a Sunday morning, and I get up really early, drink a Red Bull, and put my headphones on and just go into an internet hole of music. But mostly everything I get is from Beatport. A lot of drum and bass on Beatport. There's a lot of releases every day. So another thing that I do in the morning is every morning as I wake up, when I'm making breakfast and coffee, is I just put on Beatport and listen to what's gone out that day. And then I listen to mixes and podcasts, RIPEcast, Armory. And I also get, I do the promos for Wes. So anybody that sends in a promo to his website, and then I go through those and I pick some gems out of there too.
So quick interjection. I have never been able to figure out whether, I guess everybody finds a system that works for them. I kind of found that for whatever reason, I don't purposely avoid, other people's mixes or anything. But something about, for me, I've always got a little more joy out of discovering music for myself, particularly, music that I would DJ with, versus, having listened to it on somebody else's mix or something like that. There's a little, I know we're all DJs and we're all, at the end of the day, we're all just playing music, but at the same time, there's like this little thing in the back of my head that I want it to feel fresh to me, and I guess it feels a little bit less fresh if I listen to a mix and I'm aware of, like on one hand, I wouldn't want to just go and always be buying songs that end up in the top of the Beatport, like that kind of thing, But anyway, just kind of curious. Wes, what about you? Do you hunt on your own? Do you?
I play, so for a show, I usually do, I try to think about it like 30%-ish is, about a third is going to be original stuff that's unreleased. About a third will be a mix of original or, things off the label or promos or something like that we got that are sort of a combination of other people, maybe unreleased, or releases that I knew did well on the label. You get some insights through whether it's my own music or something else off the label. Like I get some insights into kind of where those songs were popular, like demographically and sales wise. So it's not like cheating, but it's just like, you know a little bit more than maybe someone who buys the song that doesn't have that insight, right? So, so you know, from that standpoint, you kind of know, even if, you know, even if it's even if it's not maybe my favorite song, like I like to support other artists, especially the, you know, ones that we do a deal with or work with, you know, like we don't do that just haphazardly. So, you know, once we do that, it's usually because, you know, I feel like playing it, you know, is a good thing, you know? So I would say that's where I mean, from some of that is probably where I get music that, you know, like your comment about whether it's just stuff you like or, you know, so I wouldn't say it's the charts as much as it is like something we signed for Juice, and I feel some obligation to play it even if I don't, even if maybe it's not like my absolute favorite. And you know what I found by doing that, like I guess why I'm telling that part is because I found that actually surprises me sometimes, right? It reminds me that my taste is my taste. It's not necessarily, you know, there's a lot of great music out there, you know?
Yeah.
So, and it kind of reminds me sometimes that, right, you know, like I play something where I feel like, oh, maybe I had a different, better one or another version or whatever. And then I play that one and it goes off, you know? And I'm like, oh shit, I wouldn't have expected that. So it kind of reminds me that, you know, there's just a lot out there. And then, you know, really when I'm out DJing, you know, aside from just straight up top 40 requests, you know, I still do see my job as entertaining people who came and paid money in one way or another to be there and have fun. So, you know, so if a song that is maybe not my absolute favorite goes great and unexpectedly, then that just works out great, you know? So that's a source. And then the rest is SoundCloud. I mean, that's where, aside from those two sources, my own music and the label and promos, then I would say SoundCloud is pretty much where I go all the time for starters. And I have no problem listening to mixes. Very rare that I'm not going to play like 20 tracks off a 20 track mix, you know? So I have no problem. I sit there and train spot them and Shazam away, you know, cause I'm going to go buy them. And, you know, maybe out of a 20 song mix from a DJ I've never heard or whatever, some mix show or whatever, you know, maybe some of it you can't Shazam or you can't figure it out, and then they don't put a track list maybe, or you can't buy it yet. And then maybe a few things you can, you know. So I have no problem at all just grabbing them.
And theoretically, I have no problem. I have no problem with it in theory, but yeah, it tends to be. I just, you know, sort of like, you know, the path that I tend to follow, you know, like, and it was interesting because I don't know how long both of you guys have, you know, DJ'd. I'm on year 16, I think.
Yeah.
And
we're all more than 5 years. Let's just
but I've noticed, you know, I've noticed, you know, sort of eras, you know, in my DJing, and about how both my, you know, my DJing might change a little bit. And I mentioned this, you know, kind of, and it can tie it back into, you know, our geeky side here, what we were talking about, which is I find that the longer I've DJed, like when I moved to San Francisco, I wanted everything to be like fresh tracks, you know, like I wanted to be the first guy on the mountain skiing the powder. Like I wanted people to know saw me that they weren't going to be hearing stuff that was old. You know, like that was very conscious. It was really important to me. It was a priority because not that I had an issue otherwise, but I just wanted people to get to know who I was. And I was like, I need to be, for me, at, you know, kind of the top of my game. And then, you know, when people kind of, you know, I've been in San Francisco for 11 years now, and you know, made whatever name for myself I have here, and you know, the people who know me and follow me, you know, it's just, you know, it really drove the point in after a while that, you know, well, hey, we like it's not just that we like this particular kind of music, we like your taste in music, you know. And maybe not everybody's that way, but you know, it's been kind of fun over the years to also, like, you know, and switching over from CDs and vinyl to Tractor, to be able, you know, and that's why, you know, jumping back again about, you know, losing a laptop with all my keywords and everything, that's like part of my hive brain, you know, like it's like having surgery on part of my memory in a sense, you know, and that, you know, like the work is to go back and rebuild that. And, you know, I had the good fortune of, you know, being able to play on the road for a couple of kind of extended, you know, trips. And one of the things that, you know, when you have to, you know, Wes, you tour, so I'm sure you know this, you know, but if you've never been asked, you know, to go somewhere and play like, say, 15 hours of DJing over the span of, you know, 3-4 days, you know, it kind of like kicks it up in your, you know, your preparation, you know, and so I went into like really heavy prep mode, you know, and I noticed afterwards, after going through that I became way more comfortable, you know, and also like, oh, I got my, you know, like, oh, my laptop got stolen or whatever. Hey, you know what? Like, I know I have a lot of good old music, you know, like I don't need to stress this, you know, I could go and, you know, and I've had some gigs where, you know, like I thought I exported some music and it I don't know, user error or something, but it didn't actually export to the, you know, the thumb drive. And
Right.
Wes, I think you mentioned this point something earlier, like when that moment when you have like 1 minute till you need to mix and you're like, huh, no, like none of that music I thought was here is here. And there's people that are here to listen to me. So man, I've got approximately 45 seconds to figure out something on the fly that makes it seem
I scroll, if I'm on USB, I scroll back to the root, hit artist and go down to W.
That's, see, there you go. And you can do that and go, you know, and you could probably find a track and you're like, just by in the nick of time, you know, and you'll make it. And as long as everybody in the crowd feels like what you're doing, you know, is what you want to be doing, you know, and you're not panicking or something, you know, it's all good. But
well, you're talking about long, you know, prepping for long or a lot of different music in a short period of time. I totally agree with that, and not everybody gets that opportunity. I actually got my first exposure to that through DJing like residency things for 6 hours.
Yeah.
I do the whole night, you know, and make a few $100. And back when I lived in New York, and you know, they weren't particularly huge crowds or whatever. You know, it was just you're the resident guy, right? And so, you know, at like bar lounge, dance lounge type places, you know, they might get 150, 200 people, something like that. You know, not like the big clubs. So, you know, yeah, you would do that 3 times a week. That's like you're saying, you know, that's 18 hours of music, and, you know, you're going to play some things over, but you're even yourself, you know, I think if you're a music fan, you get tired of hearing the same thing. So, you know, you don't want to wear out your favorites. And yeah, and I think that forces you to, that certainly is what forced me to learn how to really hunt down new genres, you know, of all kinds of music, and really go hunting for things just completely out of like whatever I might have historically done. And I might not find a bunch of stuff that I liked or could use for that show, but, you know, you just, you know, and then that's all parlayed for me, been very useful in terms of production, because I may listen to a lot of music that I'm not going to play those songs, but I may hear some really cool sound or instrument. I don't know what it is. I haven't heard it before. And then I'll go figure that out. And then, of course, nowadays you can, once you know the name of some instrument or, you know, method of creating a noise, you can pretty much find 100 places to get going down that path of kind of creating your own flavor of it. So. Yeah, but that's kind of it for me on the, you know, on the where I get it. You know, SoundCloud, I still think SoundCloud's the wild, wild west, man. I mean, I'm sure there's, you know, I know there's other sites and, you know, but that are very similar in nature.
I think too, with SoundCloud and the way that everything kind of maps to like Tone Den or, you know, some kind of other service like that, you get emails now from people too, you know, from things that you've liked and given an email address for.
Do you guys have any insight on what's going on with, you know, just reading recently about, you know, DJ mixes coming to Spotify and Apple Music with, I forget the company. You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, there's some technology with Apple. I don't remember the name. I think they either bought or were in talks to buy some technology that would help do the royalty recognition for that.
Which has got to be. I mean, Mixcloud already does that. You know, I'll be listening to a mix on Mixcloud, and you know, it's it points out, you know, who not all songs, but it'll point out who the artist and song is in the middle of a mix you're listening to. So it's definitely not new, but adding Spotify and Apple Music to it, that just seems like if they open that up anywhere near the way they did with SoundCloud, that's going to be crazy huge, and especially if people are start getting, actually get royalties from it, that to me, it's like, I mean, it's I haven't seen it in the news a lot, but it sounds like potentially a really big deal. Especially, I have 2 strikes against me on SoundCloud. I don't know about you guys. I mean,
Did you do it?
if I get one more strike, my account is shut down.
I was wondering how you do that with the RIPEcast. You're just kind of taking mixes from people, right? So do you upload them first on another account?
I don't know this for a fact, but I will say, so the Cowboys actually it's weird. The Cowboys don't have any strikes. I got 2 strikes against me. One was for what's their name? LA band. I forget what it was. Poolside. It was like a Neil Young track they did, and I had that up. It was my most popular mix on SoundCloud by far. Most of my mixes, it ranges, but it's in my lower side. I've got mixes that are under 1,000, but then I kind of, now that I'm, most of them are on the Cowboys, they're up in the, say, 3, a really good one maybe jumps up to around 10. I had this mix that actually like trended on SoundCloud somehow, like somebody put it in their discovery engine, and it got up to like 25,000 plays, which, that's huge for me.
Yeah.
And then I get an email. It's like, your mix, not only was it we just pulled the mix, but we're giving you a copyright strike for having that mix up there. And so that's happened to me twice now. I think Umek might have been the other track. And the thing that I had read is with their detection engine, that maybe having introductions, like if you have like a buffer 30 seconds or something like that it can help with maybe not getting those strikes. Because in both cases, the mix that got there, both mixes that got pulled or that I got strikes from, it was the first song of the mix. So
I don't have any firsthand information how it works, so those things may in fact help. But I do know for sure that there's technology that exists that really just scans the waveform. So yeah. If they're limiting the waveform scan, maybe for some bandwidth or resource utilization reason, they might limit that to the first 30 seconds, and possibly that's why people are getting away with that. But I'm highly skeptical that's the, I think it's just coincidental that they're only looking at maybe parts through the mix, and you just get lucky or you don't. And I think that's merely, if anything, I believe that's probably just, a server resource issue where they don't want to be scanning every minute of every audio that goes up, because it's some crazy number. Like, it's like a year's worth of audio, like a minute or something that goes up. Yeah. So they, that could be, I think that's what I would lean more towards, is why people are just getting lucky and then they're trying to guess at the reason it gets by or it doesn't. I think that's why there's so much confusion about why did yours make it, mine didn't, all that stuff. So my answer to that is I just stopped doing it. I don't put edits up anymore, and I don't put mixes up anymore, and I don't put them on any of the sites because they're all the same issue. Like Mixcloud maybe doesn't get caught, but that's just a fallacy. It's just because it doesn't have a following and a user base. So.
Well, I mean, but Mixcloud does have a way to pay people though. So.
Sort of. Yeah, I mean, they try, but it's the biggest issue with Mixcloud is it doesn't have a user base. That's the biggest issue there.
Yeah, we've been posting mixes to Mixcloud on a regular basis, and our mixes, whatever, at this point in time, we get, I don't know, 1,500 on up for mixes, and play count, and we've been posting for a couple of years now, I think at least. Yeah. I was trying to figure out which ones, because I don't think they have great stats. I was like, I just kind of poked in on a couple of mixes to look at the play count. And it was like, we were doing good if we got like, 87, plays on a mix that had been up for like a year. I'm like,
Yeah.
wow, 87. Like, that's great. That's wonderful. What a user, what a vibrant community.
Yeah, I mean, and we have to kind of pick, like, with the material, particularly the original material, it may have some samples or something in it, but for all intents and purposes, an original song, that kind of stuff. I mean, we kind of have to pick, like, we're not for us anyway, we're not a mixtape company. So, core for us is original songs, right? So we've gotta do what makes the most sense and is the quickest. I mean, maybe we'll do a show sometime where Colin and Kelly and I, get together and maybe even Jenny with some of the work she's done on the event side this year, and really kind of talk about all the effort we go through to launch a release. And I think if people heard what we do to get a release out, they would be like, holy shit, that's a lot of work.
I'm still trying to figure out where it makes sense to own a record label, actually. That could be a topic on next time I'm back.
Well, I think that could be a really cool, almost roundtable to maybe have the few of us that work with / get paid by the Juice org, and then some folks like yourself that are knowledgeable about and or curious with questions about that kind of stuff. I think it'd be a great session, because and then you can get to what's the value through that. But we'll save that one for another.
We'll save that. Yeah. I'm already thinking. I'm gonna help out on that episode though.
Yeah, because we're 200. We just hit I think we just hit 200. I don't know, 230th release, something like that. I don't know. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And we got.
And by the way, that's awesome. I mean, like, to think of you did 230, of anything, like that's a that's a good number to get to.
We definitely don't know everything, but we do know a lot about running a small indie label.
Right. Yeah.
There's clearly issues that get into other things when you're bigger, but for the size and range of most of what's on Beatport, for example, I think we have a pretty good flow and grip on that. But we'll get into it. We'll do another one. That's awesome. I'm glad you brought it up. Love to do it.
Sounds good. So what software do you guys do, if any, in your we talked about sort of the general setup and our Dropboxing and all that stuff. So when you guys have you bought music, you've downloaded music, you've got it all sitting in your downloads folder. What do you guys do to prep it before it ends up, and does it end up in iTunes or Tractor or Rekordbox, or there's some things that I'm curious about, how other people deal with.
Everything. I'll take this one first. Everything I play goes into iTunes without a doubt. So iTunes for me is my, without a doubt, it's not perfect, but it's my central music library for playlists, for renaming, for tagging, for all that stuff. And then I have other stuff. I'll turn it over to Kelly for her answer on kind of that first step. What do you do, Kelly? Like, what's your kind of main spot, or how do you do that?
Same here. It goes into the download folder. It goes into iTunes, and then from there it just goes into mixed in key. I do all my tagging in the comment section, and I've been looking into doing Rekordbox. I downloaded it and tried to do it for a show, but I didn't feel comfortable using it just to like throw myself into it. So I do need to spend some time with Rekordbox, but I believe that probably integrates with iTunes. Right?
That flow is similar. Like, okay, once my stuff's in iTunes, I it doesn't actually get moved to mixed in key, but I drag it from iTunes into mixed in key to do some of the analysis that it does, right? And then that's just updating the MP3 file. And I just use MP3s, 320s. I don't freak out about WAV files. I did it for a while. For about a year, I was all about the WAV file. And honestly, like, I would do shows where I'd play all MP3s, 320s, and people would be like, damn, dude, you're mastering, all the quality sounds so good. And then I'd do ones where I'd play WAV files on a shitty system, and people would be like, dude, you know, like, maybe you could work on your, like, you know, your audio quality. So like I didn't feel like I could win. And there's so much extra work to managing wave files aside from just space. I just gave up. So
right.
So I can download MP3s now.
Yeah, exactly.
Yay! More space in my computer.
Oh yeah, I forgot to give the memo to Kelly. She downloads promos, so like any promos that gets sent, she mentioned that, and I would always be like, you got to get the wave file. That was when I was like a wave freak, but I mean, of course, I have to use wave and AFF for for anything that's anything that's like it's, let's say, non DJ related, label stuff, production stuff. It all obviously has to be wave,
right.
Lost AIFF. But once it goes into DJ, land, even my own stuff, it all goes 320 MP3. Yeah, and I like mixed in key for some things. I do not use mixed in key to actually key things because I think I've just had enough success over the years by ear that I just kind of I just do it. I kind of know if something's going to sound terrible.
What's interesting is I like I'm the same way playing live. I feel like I just go with whatever my instinct is when I that song, whatever that link is, that database in my head, I trust that. I have found it really interesting though when I make, not being as much on the production side, one of the things I wanted to do was, I really wanted to put out a lot of, studio mixes,
Yeah.
And I found that mixed in key on that side helped me not visualize is the wrong word, but it's sort of like, in your head when you're thinking about, well, the energy level and the whatever, and then having the key there, it sort of allowed me to, maybe cross-check certain songs that I didn't necessarily, that my brain wasn't putting together, and so
I'll do that. Like if I drag, let's say I get a batch and it's 30 songs and I'm going to yank them all, anything that doesn't have I primarily like its BPM detection because iTunes doesn't have one. And so I don't like to wait until I'm at the record box or Serato stage to do that. I like to just have mixed do it. And I think it's just as accurate as any of the others. So, yeah, so I agree with you totally. Like I'll look at what's going on, but I don't have it auto update the tags because I don't like the way it does it. So
right. Well, I have it. My only tag I have it do the key and the tempo and the comment. I don't have it change the file. Sorry, it does change the file in the comment. Yeah. So it's
I do tempo, but I don't do the key.
Yeah. So mine's like 9A, dash 125 or whatever.
It's cool to sort by the key, real quick, like out of stuff that I pretty much know I'm going to use for a set, and then kind of look at it. And the cool thing about mixed in key is it's not all that intrusive. So like I could get 20, 30 new songs, tag them up, and then I could maybe start creating a playlist of 100 songs that I might use, or feel like I'm going to use for that night, out of which I might play 30. Yeah, that's usually my ratio is about 1 to 3. I'll if I know I'm going to play an hour, I'll put 70 or 80 songs in a list and just kind of freewheel it from there in most cases. But it's so easy with mixed in key. Like I said, it's not really intrusive or a lot of work. So you could take your whole 100 songs and drag them in there real quick and look at some of the info and kind of be like, oh, that might go with that or whatever. Just like you said, some inspiration, or try a different mix when I'm just messing around with Rekordbox, kind of practicing mixes or seeing what goes together. But still, by and large, I don't rely on that much. Like literally, I just put together stuff that going back to like how you get it. I find it, I like it, I put it in the thing. I might throw a few things from juice artists that I'm not sure about, throw them all in there, and then I just mix for an hour or two. And I don't necessarily mix the full lengths, like just mix like the mix parts of it, where I feel like I would do the transitions and mixes. And I just blow through a bunch of different stuff, and I kind of just keep reordering, things, or maybe grouping some things in bunches of 5, where I like to call them runs, like I will do stuff like that, where if I get 4 or 5 mixes that I think are just a banging like run of music for 10 minutes, I'll group them together, so like, if I'm here and I think that was awesome, and then I'm somewhere live doing it, I don't necessarily have to remember all 5 or 6 that went, in my opinion, awesome when I was back in the studio. And if they're vibing and it's working, then I just play them, you know, like rip it off and play them.
Right.
You know,
hey,
I've got no problem with having, you know, a list that happens to have 5 songs in a row already that way. Like, I don't see that as a planned set. I see that as just, I've got groups of things that I liked together, and then if they work when I'm out, then rock and roll. If it's not working, then that's where I think it's a problem if you're stuck relying on that, and I don't have that problem. So
right. One thing I'll mention too with this, you know, the software and all that. So we all have mixed in key. Kelly, you might want to if you're planning on diving into Rekordbox at all, and I'll say this, my caveat with Rekordbox is I would really prefer to not dive into Rekordbox. The reason that I have, so my situation is, the reason, yeah, going for
like that duck in your video earlier.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Deep diving. Well, there's and I have not used this. So I don't know if I'm gonna recommend it. I'm just gonna say take a look at it because I've been intrigued and I need to actually check it out a little bit more because they just they have a version 2 that's either out or nearly out, but it's called Record Buddy, and record like Rekordbox, like REKORD, and its whole like reason for existence is for people who use Serato or Tractor or whatever and want to be able to sync music, you know, like keep the metadata, that kind of stuff. So its whole purpose is to be a glue between those.
Okay.
And, you know, for me, that comes up a fair amount because, you know, in San Francisco, there's, you know, it's kind of burner central here. And, you know, the amount of gigs that pop up where, you know, you might say yes to a gig because they're your friends or you believe, you know, you want to help that camp or whatever it is. They're like, oh, okay, cool. You know, are you cool with tag sets? Or you know, you cool with whatever? You're like, oh, okay. So you mean this is a 5-hour gig total, and there's going to be 10 DJs, you know, and so that means I'm playing 30 minutes in a cramped booth with DJs coming in before and after, you know, and I'm like, that just does not sound like a Tractor gig to me, you know. So that's a USB/Rekordbox gig for me.
Yeah.
And so I have more of those than I mean, I love doing the gigs, but from an organizational standpoint, that's another thing that I've struggled with a bit because I sort of have like tried to push away Rekordbox, you know, like no, I want to be a Tractor guy, you know, but that just doesn't help me as much when I load up a USB with songs and it doesn't have, you know, Rekordbox does have some things that it helps you with, you know. So anyway, so Record Buddy 2.0, I'll recommend just as a take a look and see if it might fit your purpose because it is kind of handy.
I'm using Serato on my machine at home, but I don't usually play Serato out. I've got a box and I really don't feel like unhooking it and hooking it back up again. So that would be helpful. That's the only reason why I wanted to do Rekordbox is because I want to be able to bring a USB and not it just be song title, you know, and that's it. Because a lot of things don't read anything but the song title. So, which is fine, but I would prefer to have a little bit more information, especially the comments.
Yeah.
Yeah, Record Buddy, I'm looking at it now. I used it when it was V1, and I recall it's a cool product, what it does. The reason I didn't use it anymore was because V1 was really a Tractor Rekordbox MP3 tag kind of sync. It didn't include Serato, but then Serato or Scratch Live opened up, or Serato DJ opened that up in terms of the ability for them to do that. And I think 2.0 does. But, you know, speaking of which, like, yeah, it says right here, Serato, Tractor, etc. So speaking of which, Serato I was a really long time user of it. And I could deal with the audio card, you know, fine, whatever, you know, bring a flashlight, headlamp, whatever, make it happen. Like, you know, people were used to it enough. That was okay, or I got okay with that side of it. But I just don't know what in the world those clowns are thinking with the Mac operating system. Like, the drivers never work.
It doesn't. They just added Sierra too, but most of the hardware does not match up to
Great.
Serato.
Yeah.
So that's interesting. So I had thought from not being a Serato guy, I've never used Serato ever. So I can't speak to it other than just observationally, you know, or whatever from other people. But I guess I was, you know, on the I peruse the, you know, say like, you know, DJ's subreddit, you know, on Reddit, and you know, it seemed to me like at least some of the things I was hearing about that back and forth, I was kind of under the impression that, you know, maybe Serato was actually making some really good advancements and, you know, this and that. And I was actually starting to wonder if I should get a little jealous or not, you know?
Well, to be fair, here's the way I would separate that. So to be fair to Serato, the company that makes the Serato DJ product, the software itself, the software in terms of a DVS or, you know, digital DJ software, I think is great. I've never been a huge Tractor user, so I'm not going to compare, but I've used Tractor some, and it's got a lot of great stuff too. So from that perspective, I think there's probably some, you know, some FOMO either way, right? You know, or one, right? The problem on the Serato side is, for example, any of us that use it as a DVS, which means you got to have the audio card still, you know, Rain makes that audio hardware, and Rain is the one that's dropped the ball with the drivers, you know? That's the problem. So Serato gets the blame. I mean, it's almost like SoundCloud getting blamed for taking down copyrighted music. That's not their fault. They have to comply with the law or they get put in prison.
Yeah, right.
That's it.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of people that just don't get that. It's like, you may not like that, but the law is if SoundCloud violates that, then they can go to court and be put in prison.
Yeah,
you know, like the dude from Napster way back, Sean Fanning or whoever, right? Like that dude was scared shitless. He was like 23 years old and stood like potentially 25 years in prison for felonies. So, you know, that's why SoundCloud does it, if for no other reason, because they have to abide by the law. So, you know, but anyway, like back to the Serato thing, it's you know, Rain makes great hardware. There's no doubt about it. The mixers, other things. I don't know if Rain decided to not support the audio boxes as well as they do the much pricier mixers. I don't know. I don't own any of their mixers. I've owned like an SL1, 2, 3, and 4. That's all their audio cards, and none of them work with El Capitan. And it's not like, you know, it's not an isolated thing. Kelly and I went back about this a lot. You could go to their forums, and they were just inundated with months of people complaining about this, and they didn't even answer anything. So, you know, so what that did for me was that gave me the opportunity and forced me to look for other things, because I couldn't use my Serato out live. I wasn't going to drag a Rain mixer with me, even if that worked, you know, and they're like $2,000. So I wasn't going to do that. So I went and I got, it just so happened that Rekordbox 4.0 and Rekordbox DJ, along with that release, came out. And if you're constantly using CDJ 2000s, then that release of Rekordbox 4.0 made it where you could use it live, just like Serato or Tractor. And it might be missing some bells and whistles, fine, but you could do it, and you didn't need any other hardware. You plug the 2 USBs from your MacBook Pro straight into the USB port of the CDJ. On a Mac, you have a little audio aggregator so that it knows the 2 decks are one on each USB, and away you go. It uses the sound card in the CDJ. So for me, that is what got me to go to Rekordbox.
And then when you play after, you have to remember. I forget what was the message when I played after you. We had talked about our DJ nightmare stories at dinner at Sushi a couple nights before, or the night before, I think. And then in real time, it happened right in front of me, where I go to plug my USB key in or something, whatever I think I was using USB that night, and it says some message about, like, I don't know, PC Sync or I don't know, something. I can't remember what. PC Load Letter. No, that was Office Space. But it like posts some, it's like some little message that's up on the CDJ 2000, and I'm sitting there going, well, this is really weird, and Wes is playing his track off the other one, so I don't really have anywhere else to turn here. This is my only place I can play music. And I think what ended up happening was, I'm pretty sure I ended up playing your song again. And I was kind of like listening to it going like, and I think I'd had some new songs or something, you know, and so I'm kind of like just scratching my head going like, what in the hell is going on right now? Like,
did I just play your last song again?
I think I'm sitting there with kind of puzzled and just going, what is going on? And then, yeah, and I think you looked at me after like 30 seconds or something. You're like, yeah, you're playing my music. And I'm like, well, not intentionally. And I thought that was great, especially after we had, you know, kind of foreshadowed our DJ nightmares, you know, like here we are, like, you know, packed house, it's just going off. And, you know, I mean, you know,
record box DJ is not perfect. I mean,
yeah,
like a lot of these things we're talking through, it's like, I guess the other reason I'm okay with it, like I was like one more reason to just take the leap aside from the sort of, you know, what I felt was non-supportive from the Serato Rain community was, you know, there are times, like you said, I mean, I have to play off USB sticks like we were just talking about. And you know, if you're already using it, you know, like, I mean, that's by design, right? It's why they came out with a live version of the product versus just the prep and prepare and prep your USB sticks, because, you know, they know that people are already in there doing one. I mean, what does it hurt to try the other? So I do think I have my experience with Record Box DJ Live is that it's not quite as stable as Serato was. So that does still make me a little nervous, but you know, but I always have, in terms of the pure DJ workflow, I always, if I'm going to use my laptop that night with Record Box DJ, I always make sure that I have the exact same prep on the USB sticks.
right.
So worst case, I'm like,
That's a ding, ding, ding.
How many
Let's start this one in the.
That's a pull the light moment for anyone listening.
hot tips right here, everybody. Yes, have the two or have the, again, this just goes back to like the Dropbox or the whatever redundancy, you know, like if you don't have at least two of something, then, you know, and sometimes even more, you're sort of just asking for the, you know, potential failure.
And I always two USBs identical. Just
yeah.
I ran into somebody at SD Utopia this week. You know, he went on after me and was like, you know, oh, hey, the link's not working. I'm like, yeah, it's not working. I knew what the next question was. I was like, yes, I can confirm for you. I just played an entire set. It's not working.
We just ran into that at Burning Man. You know, I think I've run into that twice lately, which is funny because I went a very, very long time where sync always worked. You know, I mean, the link. Sorry, and then. Yeah, on two different occasions. And the first one, I was completely prepared. You know, like I had my USBs. And I even had I brought out to Burning Man. Let's see if I have it. This is not the actual, but it was kind of like one of these. You know, it's like just little. You know, can be an airtight little case, and you know, and I put my DJ stuff in there, like my USB keys and stuff. Yeah. And yet, you know, because I am like the king of misplacing, you know, keys, wallets, you know, like usually one would say important things, you know, DJ USB keys is another, you know, so I'll have a gig and instead of it going immediately back in there, it goes, you know, in my pocket or it goes in whatever. And then, you know, I end up at this other gig where, you know, I've got like 3 USB keys on me, but somehow the full backup of one was missing. So I had one that was prepped, you know, and really had everything on it that I wanted. And then I had 2 that I either had to choose. Like, do I want this one key that's got like 4-month-old music on it, or this other one, you know, like same thing, you know? And I just kind of like pounding myself against the head, you know, just going like, damn it, you know, it's like running into my own semi-predictable behavior pattern, you know, which is like, once you start not following the system, you know, it should be entirely predictable that something like that will happen, you know?
I started putting, well, I wouldn't lose them, but I would break them, the USBs, like the ones that, you know, slide in and out and various things.
Yeah.
And
right.
I ended up finding these billet aluminum ones, and they ended up they cost me like $35 a piece or something. I mean, granted they were 64 gig, but they 35 or 40 bucks. They're more sturdy, and they actually have a nice hole in the billet aluminum part of it. So
Make a noise.
Like this one right there.
There you go.
Yeah, probably like that. So I put them both on like a carabiner and key rings, and it's kind of like not so small now, and it's like a little bit easier to not forget, or it's just more noticeable. And I'm much better now with remembering, hey, that's missing or whatever. Because literally you could show up like now, like if I bring my V-Moda headphones, I mean they're maybe like the size of a big avocado in the case. Yeah. And then you just have this little, like I have this little zip pouch with earplugs and a couple USB sticks in it. Like literally, you could show up with that, man. Like that's like.
Have you ever DJ'd with good earbuds?
No, I would like to.
Like the internal ones.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like I used to have a pair of Shure, I don't know what they were, 215s or something. They're not like ridiculously, like expensive or anything, but they're probably like in the 125 range or something. And there was a little stretch there just when I was playing locally where I was in between, DJ headphones, and there's a couple funny things about it. One is if you DJ with those, like, and those were the Shures go like behind your ear, and they're the way that the cable is, they really, it's kind of sleek, because it doesn't hang in a way that's easy to see, especially like in a club or something. So It was kind of funny. There was a few gigs there where I swear people are just like, what is this guy doing? He's not even using headphones. He's just, he's on.
He's plugged in.
He's on tractor, but he's not like using headphones. So it was kind of funny. Like I almost kind of preferred having headphones, if for no other reason than at least people see that I'm doing something, But actually, I really liked earbuds for some gigs, but it tended to be, the smaller / quieter gigs,
I feel like I think I've tried. Now that you mentioned the Shure ones, I do think I tried them a while. They might have been like not as good as they are nowadays. It's definitely been 4 or 5 years since I tried it, maybe. But I recall like the problem I had was the ambient noise was too much, and I remember doing a lot of research on it, and like the ones that the high dollar ones that somebody like Steve Tyler with Aerosmith wears on stage for his they're expensive.
Yeah.
And I think those do a way better job. Not just the fit, but maybe some noise canceling technology on the ambient noise and some other things. I got a feeling they weren't the $100. Sure.
The ones are higher tech about allowing some noise in, but not deafening you and everything.
Yeah. Plus, I think they've got those things are running wireless to a soundboard where there's a sound engineer who's probably monitoring the sort of mix of ambient versus whatever's in Tyler's ears, I'm sure it's more sophisticated than what you get out of the buds plugged into the 1/4-inch plug to the adapter to the adapter to the adapter.
Well, and the one where I went, and like I said, I was kind of using them for a little bit, and I had fully intended on buying new ones, but I just wasn't in a huge hurry for whatever reason. And the thing that changed my mind was being at a gig where I can't remember what the gig was, but it was if it wasn't a ghost ship, it was something big. This was more like 1,000 people or something instead of like 150 or 200. And I was sitting there in the whatever I'm DJing, and running into that issue of, wow, I have the volume like turned all the way up on my tractor, and I can't hear it.
That's the worst. That's the worst, because you think like, oh wait, and that's something that's really hard to kind of determine when you're just in your studio or whatever, like you can't, like it's loud and you're like, oh, there's plenty of volume here, and then you don't realize like how loud the ambient is when you're out.
Hey, I'm gonna throw in so it just reminded myself. So here's one. I don't know if you guys have, either of you have used Tractor or controllers, but So I ran into kind of an interesting thing where I had a couple gigs that I wasn't able to like really explain still what happened, but that a couple real time glitches where the audio sort of like, either grinds to a halt for a second or something like that. Yeah, there you go. There you go. That's fast. So that was one thing that was just like I was trying to figure out what was going on. I had a MacBook Air now, and I never had issues really, before with my Tractor. And in talking to some other people, here's another pro tip. With Tractor S4, with all the Tractor S controllers, you can plug in USB and power it.
Right.
I don't think they necessarily tell you, in the manual that if you don't plug it into the AC adapter, that your volume is going to be about 2/3 of the max that it can go with powered in.
Yeah.
And we were playing at a kind of a private camp out, not a big rager, per se. It's more of a friendly group of 100 or so people. But still, you're a DJ and you want to play and you want to put on a good gig. And this other buddy of mine, he also had a Tractor. I can't remember if it was an S4 or an S8, but he was running into the same problems, except not just in his queue, not just in his queued up songs, but he was actually running into issues with his output. And he switched over. So this is another one of those nightmares. He had like a 2-hour gig that he had been planning all this music. He was going to take everybody on a journey, this whole thing. And he's about 40 minutes in or something. And, it's kind of like, have you listened to what it sounds like? I mean, it sounds kind of weird, what's going on? And we switched over, we put something on the CDJs. And I mean, it was like immediately, sounded twice as good. And I never did figure out, with him, if he was able to really troubleshoot it. But one of the things that I had noted was the first thing I said to him was like, hey, do you have your AC adapter? Because it doesn't look like you don't have your AC adapter in. He didn't have it in, and so I still to this day, I kind of wonder, if some of those glitches and things like that is not because of the CPU or your power on your computer, because I'll be looking and it's nowhere near maxed out, but I've run into those kind of glitchy situations, and from something as small as just not having it plugged into the,
Well, there's definitely, there's no doubt there's electronic design, intentional design functionality like that. The best place I've ever found that really digs into that stuff and seems to know what they're talking about is, in fact, the Bay Area guys, DJ Tech Tools from your neck of the woods.
Yeah.
They tend to tear stuff apart pretty thoroughly with that kind of stuff in mind, usually when they do controllers and all that. And Kelly, you've used controllers a fair amount, right? Like you've at least had your spin at them, right?
Yeah, I've borrowed a friend's controller and did a little mini tour of Florida. I had a couple issues. It actually stopped working during one of the shows, which really stinks because when you borrow somebody else's stuff and it stops working, that means you're on the hook for it. So he's been a guest on this show. And, but I really did like it. And I personally would like to get rid of my setup and just get a controller at this point, just for, I don't know, to have to bring with me on for shows, but at the same time, the ones that I want are really not portable. I mean, if I took it somewhere, it would be actually,
that's totally the issue for me. I mean, I just can't I really got into it for a while. I mean, look, I got this thing, so I've been in it since.
Yeah, that's what I was using.
Since this thing was still in production, and that's for anyone that's not watching or just listening. I'm holding up a VCI 380, which is like, I'm pretty sure you got to have USB power, everything rolling to even make it work. So, I didn't get it when it was first out, but I got it before it was done with, out of production. So, I got into it quite a bit. DJ Tech Tools was definitely my guide and to that path, and MIDI fighters and Twitches, and I tried a lot of things, and even that's what even got me into using Tractor for a while. Keith was I got an S4, and I thought, man, this is dope, And I remember watching, I don't know, like Ian Golden is always like a wizard on controllers. So, and I was like, oh yeah, I'm going to do that, And then I just found like I didn't really enjoy it that much. So, and then like you got to trying to carry them around, and at least at that time they were probably as frowned upon in a club or worse than trying to like plug in a Serato box, or Rain, audio card. So I was like, yeah, I think I'll just. And then like the CDJ 2000s came out, man, and as expensive as they are, it's hard to deny that like that's what's going to be everywhere.
Right. Yeah. Well, the other thing too is that what I realized with because my one of my best friends and kind of DJ mentor, he went he really went heavy on the road of using the controllers, and he uses Vivid, which is they specialize in the geeky ones that look really cool because they're all programmable lights, and you can set up all your own patterns, and do you want blue light and pink light, green light, red light, whatever. And the thing for me that I realized is I don't, it kind of takes like a programmer mindset, to really like an engineer mindset. Yeah. When you're, exactly. There you go. And when you're over there, and like for me, like Ableton made sense to me. I had tried a couple different music programs like DAWs. When I had looked at a couple different controllers, and I was sort of like, I don't know, just that just didn't quite feel right. And Tractor was the right balance for me, in that it more or less replicated CDJ controls while at the same time offering some programmability if you want it. If you feel like it, it's there. You can put in macros and do that kind of stuff, or you can load up maybe some other settings or setups that people have done. And some easy effects are there, stuff like that. So that was like the Three Bears. This porridge was just right for me. But I would look sort of in some level of envy that my buddy, who sometimes would pull all-nighters. Like he would tell me the next day or something like, oh yeah, I was over here programming this setup. He's like, this is so dope. Check this out. Like my Vivid. He programmed it that he could do these like scratch echo effect that was in time to music, and I'm like, that's awesome, dude. Like, now tell me this though, like when you look at your, like, how the hell do you know what this is? He's like, like how do you know what all the buttons do? Like, I mean, like there's just a whole level of like, I have a 9-to-5 job, and like I only have so much time. I'm not spending it with my girlfriend or whatever, and I'm like, I don't think I have enough time to get that level of deep dive, into programming it and understanding how to do all of that and keep it up, Yeah, and Kelly hit me with a note about like Ableton Push and things like that, and it's true. There's some great controllers out there. What I found, I mean, I went through the APC stuff for clip launching. I love using the session view to make music. It's instrumental to what I do, and writing and storyboarding and all that kind of jazz, and just getting ideas. But when I tried to translate that into my years of DJing mindset with typically 2, sometimes 3 decks, I just it didn't work for me. Like I realized I didn't really want to be like, there's a lot of stuff. Like it's not just like you take all the stuff you do for production, like of a like music production, and then it's just the same thing live. It's not like that. It's like all the macros, like you were saying, to do the scratch effects, and you basically can do almost anything between the standard Ableton Live suite, and then if you use the extensions with Max for Live and so forth, and then take it even further, maybe get into doing your own Max for Live plugins. You're basically, at least the way I felt was that I was creating things in the DAW that I was not going to use for producing, and I was essentially creating things that were replicating functionality that already exists in Rain or Pioneer hardware, let's say. So I kind of was like,
like you, it's like that's just a ton of time. You know, you can go you can find all this stuff. There's community sites and all that. I mean, fair enough, but nonetheless, it's a lot of time. It's maintenance, and then regardless, you're dragging a controller around with you.
Well, and actually, you know, the other thing, and I'll tie this into something else though, which you know, is sort of like, you know, maybe about finding a happy medium. The thing that really, like, as a DJ, that kind of got me excited though, when I would watch what he was doing, and maybe this is in part, I think maybe certain genres are it makes a little bit more sense to, you know. So for instance,
techno for sure, like in my opinion, techno for sure lends itself to that stuff.
And he was more of a tech house guy, but yeah, I mean, more or less, you know, same kind of idea. Was, you know, here I've got this, like, you know, here I just have a, you know, here's a nice bass line with a kick behind it, you know, but not much else, you know, and then here's on this other song, here's this nice, like, sustained synth kind of thing going. And so it would kind of make sense to me is what he put it, when the light bulb went off, that he didn't have to play music in a linear fashion anymore. And I went, okay, well, you know, and if you think back to, you know, say vinyl or CD, and, you know, obviously you could mix quick and all that kind of stuff, and, you know, but in general, I like, ooh, okay, I got, you know, like, I get what you're saying now, you know, like, and so it kind of, it opened up a creative avenue, which,
oh, no doubt it does that. I mean, because you know, you basically, you essentially end up playing off of the session view, and it's limitless. Like, maybe not limitless, but it's a whole lot of options.
yeah. But the other thing about that too is that it does kind of take a certain what's the word? Commitment to keeping up the system. You know, or you know, like, so for instance, and, you know, I don't know if I asked you guys this previously, but, you know, one of the questions I had for you guys was, how often do you end up, either accidentally or on purpose, or just, you know, life intrudes, that you kind of end up, you know, really, like, having to do a gig, you know, on this, you know, fly by the seat of your pants, you know, versus, you know, do you make it so that, no, I always make time, I always have prepared ahead of time, you know, because I've gone back and forth where the gigs that I know I played better, feel more confident, you know, feel just like, okay, I totally have this, is minimum is really having gone through and knowing my pool of music, you know, not going through and like, oh shit, let me look through past gigs or old, you know, batches of music. But then on top of that, you know, it just kind of gets better and better, you know, if I've taken the time to make sure I've set up my cue points, you know, and where in the song, you know, might I want to skip ahead or jump or, you know, or loop, that kind of stuff. Like, if I do all that stuff, I mean, I'm golden, you know. I'm very good at adapting on the fly, but there's definitely I do know a mental difference, you know. In
Ross, what about you, Ross? Kelly? What do you on that topic?
I really don't. I'm not really frilly when I do stuff, so I don't. As far as cue points are concerned, I really just kind of do it on the fly. But most of the time, I know my tracks pretty well. Some of the time, I don't know them as well as I should. But if it's something really important, then I would. If it's something that, like, say, I just found out I'm playing next week, yeah, I'm definitely going to practice and try and pull at least, 40 tunes or so for about an hour and go from there. But I don't do a lot of quick mixing or anything like that. Usually let it ride out.
I'll do some of both, I guess.
Yeah,
I mean, I'll definitely, like, I'll have the last, I keep. We didn't really get into the whole folder file playlist within iTunes type.
We can go back there, because that's.
I may not have enough time today. I got to go eat at some point. But anyway, like, without getting into the details of that, like, I'll have, like, my last 10 shows, not verbatim. Like, I don't take like the log that you can get from Rekordbox or the DVS system, and then recreate. I don't, like, take that playlist in that sense. I just mean, like, the iTunes playlist in terms of, the
cool. Like,
I may have 100 songs in it. I might have only played 30, but but I'll know that they were all good. So I'll have the last 10, so probably a total of 700 or 800 songs at least on my USB. So I'm pretty confident, like if I just had to walk out the door like right now and go play, like I'd be fine.
So
Because I'm always within a month, like or 2 weeks, of like the last well-planned, if you will, show. So in that sense, I'm fine.
Right.
Mine is pretty it's pretty granular as far as going through iTunes, like the type of genre, and I guess I do put the comments on there, but it goes pretty deep on.
So I shared a little with you guys, like so mine is Dropbox. It's always month or year and then month, and then I've changed this a little bit over the years. I used to actually put, gigs on, I might put, Go Ship or, Breakfast of Champions as a folder. Now I kind of go more of I dump most everything in a month folder. I might still have maybe I'll have a folder for Beatport or maybe a folder for SoundCloud if it feels like there's something different about that batch to me. But I kind of have I've kind of let that organization fall more to my music library, my software now, so it used to be iTunes. Like I say, I'm using Tractor right now, but I've thought about reintegrating iTunes or something else because that's part of my flow. I'm still trying to figure out a little bit.
I mean, Recordbox, well, Serato did it too, but that was one of the things I loved about Serato because at least when I first started using it, was one of the only ones that would read the iTunes library file. But now, I think they all do now, but Recordbox, one of the sweet things about Recordbox is you can actually refresh it without closing Recordbox. So you can actually refresh, not that I would make many changes to iTunes, like in the middle of a show, probably never, but even just when prepping, it's substantially easier because Serato, you had to exit Serato and iTunes, close it so that it would update I think it's ITB, iTunes ITL file, which is then updates the XML file, which gets read by Serato and Recordbox and anything else that reads it. They're not actually reading the iTunes library. They're actually reading the XML file, which is, a current updated copy from when you close it. So they, Recordbox can now does a refresh. So that's cool. You don't have to close everything. I find that a little more efficient. But as far as the folder file structure, I kind of do that. I make I just make a folder for the, the show, so that way I have them by date, date, comma, show, and they'll stay sorted. All my shows will, be sorted by date in terms of the main folder. And then within the folder, I'll have I usually have 3 or 4, playlists, not like set lists, but just playlists, like in terms of the iTunes term. And I usually name them just like A list, B list, C list, something like that. And then the A list will be the majority. Like if it's gonna be an hour and a half set, I'll have, like I said, 70 to 100 songs in there. And for me, that's just all the things that basically I know everything in there is something that I currently feel like playing. And then B list might be a little questionable, whatever. And the way I end up populating those is because back to the actual bringing things into the library, if I'm not per se planning for a specific show, then that goes more to the tagging and stuff. So I have pretty extensive searches, or smart lists as they're called in iTunes, smart playlists, and I use those pretty extensively. So I do try to keep at least the DJ music that's in my iTunes library, because I have other stuff obviously. But the DJ music portion, I try to stay pretty up to, current, like not having a bunch of stuff in there that's not filed, I guess.
Right. Yeah, that's the smart list. That's funny. Because I was really big on the smart playlist for quite a while, and then when I lost all my organization, it's like it's one of those things that's in the back of my head. I know I need to go and recreate it again.
Ones I do the most are I do things that don't stand a lot of risk if they got lost. I think I'm pretty protected these days, with my backup strategy, but definitely more than I used to be. But barring that, I basically smart list by stars, because I do rank things with stars. I try to use what's in iTunes. Like I said, it's not perfect with its flexibility, but in some cases, it's kind of like having some rules or limitations, of the library is kind of nice because you're like, oh, I can't really do that. I did find some cool scripts. There's a thing. Have you used any Doug scripts? You seen that?
I have. Yeah. I know Doug's. I know Doug.
Yeah, so that's that's probably the one I find most people don't.
What have you? Well, actually, but I want to ask you that. What one? Let me just add a little flavor though to the one thing I was going to say was so. Because I was going to ask you this as well. Ask you guys this. It's like genres. I tend to go. I use 1, 2, and 3 as a precursor, to a genre. So, 1/new funk, or 1-new funk, 2-new funk, 3-new funk, and I do the same thing, whether it's breakbeat or house or anything. And in my classification, 1 typically means, there are exceptions, but generally means, that's like a lower energy, so I could have, I could have
a out, man.
yeah, well, and same thing on house. Like, so if it's house music, it could be all the same BPM, but the feeling of it, like, so that's if I'm starting off a gig at, hey, if I'm playing at 10 p.m. or if I'm playing, in the afternoon or something, I have a couple different ways to slice it, which is I could look at my, my 1 and 2 houses, because 3 is probably going to be a little more banging. However, I might have, on the flip side, I might have some really nice summer music that is rated high. So, it's like I have to think about my list properly, sometimes to understand how my brain thinks about the music, so I can kind of capture it for a particular gig. But it gives me a lot of flexibility because, like, with something like, I don't know, because like say ghetto funk, a ghetto funk, the difference between a 1 and a 3 is a 1 is probably going to be really probably, I don't want to say like a down tempo gig, but a truly more mid tempo or slower sounding for ghetto funk song.
Well, like maybe more of an opening track, opening set, or
an opener, a builder, exactly. And the 3s, the 3s are going to be the bangers, and so in a given set, I tend to, depending on the mood and whatever, I tend to treat that as a warm up, a build, peak, and then if I want to drop back down, I can kind of like look at that energy level and just decide on the fly. The other thing,
that's kind of what I think that's kind of what I use now that you're saying that, like not as precise, but that's kind of what I do with the ratings. I kind of like 5 is definitely peak stuff for me. 4 stars is not quite peak, but a banger. 3 is like, maybe a little bit of a filler, which not that, I don't mean that in a bad way, but I'd probably play that earlier or later. Yeah. And then anything with 2 or 1, I don't even bother. I just star it so that it's like that. It basically acknowledges that I have looked at it and I just didn't like it, or maybe I didn't. Maybe I liked it, but I didn't feel like it was for a DJ, set. So
right, yeah. My 1s and 2s could mean it's crappy, but it could just mean that it's just not a song I want to play out. But I actually might want to listen to it at home. Yeah,
it's like unfortunately, like Beatport, for example, had a fantastic idea with the level to which they took like the Beatport Pro application. Have you used that at all, Kelly or Keith? Have y'all used that?
Yep.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I guess they didn't. Well, it kind of, I'm not saying it's still what it is, it works, but it's like, it doesn't really have, to my knowledge, I haven't used it in a while, but I don't think it still has a great, if any, iTunes implementation. It requires some import, export, no one wants to mess with that, so it's like, but it was cool. They have, the granularity of genres and proper hashtagging and proper, what do you call it? Mood, energy, right? Like they have dedicated places for that. Unfortunately, it just doesn't leverage like any significant music library that all of us use, so kind of a bummer.
That's I had heard that you could use Beatport Pro, like in my case, where you have a laptop stolen or something like that, or you're for whatever reason your metadata goes bye-bye, that you could actually like and I haven't verified this myself, but I've thought about it for some of my older stuff, that I still, again, that I haven't gone back and sort of like rebuilt that up. But I've heard that you could like load music into Beatport or something and actually like apply the metadata that it knows for that song.
Yeah, you can. Yeah, you can. I mean, it does do that. I mean, there's some cool stuff about it, especially if you lost and had to restore purchases or whatever, like things like that. I mean, it's definitely some cool stuff. I just don't, for me, it's just not part of my every gig flow.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
I would use it more for maintenance, or if I bought a ton of music for whatever reason. It's definitely nice for the downloads, throttling and all that. But outside of that, I don't find a whole lot of. I miss it more than anything because I wish what it had was available, for iTunes, because I use the Kelly mentioned earlier. She uses the comments field for some things in iTunes, and you can't do any user-defined fields there, at least that are supported by the updates, frequent updates to iTunes. So, but I use that Doug scripts. There's a couple I really like. I was going to mention. There's one that's I really like, the one that allows you to modify the group field specifically. And that's where I put all my hashtags. So like the stuff you were talking about, I don't know where you put those things in iTunes, but the 1- and your genres, because there's obviously a genre field in iTunes, but for whatever reason, and that Doug's, if it's actually Doug, he's pretty sharp, right? So for whatever reason, he said that the only field they allow you to do these append and comma separated appending and successors and predecessors type stuff within a field is the group field. So he has a script for that, and it's really super cool. So I just started using traditional hashtags within that, and then my searches became much more effective searching off that group field. Anyway, I don't know, you might want to mess with it if you hadn't. A couple other of his scripts that I really like, he's definitely got some find and replace tools for the various fields you can apply them to. Those are really cool. And I don't remember the name of the application. He has a file renamer, but I don't use his because
I use a name. What is it? Name Mangler.
Yeah, there's a couple of them on the app store. I don't remember which one I have, but I bought it. It's more like a general file renamer, and it's pretty cool for if you get a batch of stuff from somewhere or whatever. You just want to go, get rid of some character you don't like or whatever, in 100 files, more like that kind of thing.
Well, I have a lot of Beatport tracks that say original mix or whatever, and I can care less about. I mean, just don't say anything in it, and I'll know it's the original mix.
Right.
So, yeah,
it's all about character and space savings, right? Especially when you have to deal with the display on a CDJ from time to time. I mean, you only get, I don't know, 25 characters or something are really visible, and so.
Yeah, well, one thing I was just thinking, we should after we're through with this, we should put up a post about our some of the software that we each used, and like you're saying, like the Doug scripts, things like that. Come up with maybe post a little resources that we talked about.
Yeah, I mean, those are all cool things. I think a lot of that stuff is talked about probably in DJ Tech Tools somewhere, but but I don't recall. I catch up with their stuff at least every month or so, and I don't recall seeing a good kind of just maybe general couple DJs with close but different perspectives on these kind of topics.
Yeah.
I'm sure it could be, dude. If I got to listen to an hour and a half of this 10 years ago, I would have been stoked.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very niche thing, but if it's knowledge that you are interested in, it when you come across little nuggets that end up saving you time and energy, or help make a gig go better than it did before. I mean, that's not, it's not priceless, but it's definitely valuable.
I will back a little bit, back full cycle to the nerdness we started with and our drives and stuff. I do want to make a quick mention because Colin, he's one of those guys that's a music fanatic, but a bit newer to the DJ side of things, younger guy. And we had a great conversation about hard drives and backup and all that. And it took us a while because it was all new to him, but or at least the way I do it was new versus what he does, a little bit more basic method. But I will mention what I do, and then if anyone has questions or whatever, we might get into a longer thing some other time. But I Keith, going back to what you mentioned about your hard drives crashing in your iMac, one thing I learned, or in like the inboard, the native hard drive, one thing I learned maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago, that I really started doing last year was the drive on the actual machine, like the one it comes with. I don't use that for anything other than applications that need to run on the same drive as the operating system. So my Ableton, all the software we've talked about, etc. Right? And that way, if that drive crashes, I've really lost nothing because I license all the software I use, so I don't have to go find cracked stuff or anything like that. So for me, it's just get the drive fixed, go back to work. All my data is, and I'm talking more for my iMac, like my studio workstation, which I mentioned earlier. So then I have one of these which has 2 drives in it that are, I won't get all nerdy into the RAIDs and what they mean, but I have one of these that has 2 drives in it that are mirroring each other identically. So if one drive dies, the other has an exact replica, and then that's my working drives. And then I also have another one of these that has 2 drives in it, which are separate backups. And I just use Time Machine for the backup software. There's probably better, but that works fine for me. Yeah. So I effectively have my unit like this that's an operational drive, which has essentially failover protection. If a drive dies, I'm still okay. I replace that dead drive. That's fine. But I also have another one of these that's making 2 full, like, incremental backup copies. That difference took a pretty good while for Colin and I to, like, get to the understanding of why that's different than just, like, say, copying your contents of your hard drive over to an external hard drive. That's a completely, like, if anyone's listening, that's not a bad thing. It's better than nothing, but that's a completely manually intensive and different way of doing, that. So getting those incremental backups is very important if you're working, like, maybe not every day even, but just if you're weekly making changes to a lot of files, like we're talking about pretty much throughout the whole last hour and a half, I think incremental backups are really sweet because you could go back to yesterday and pull that up.
So what do you think is for, somebody that's aspiring to be a producer or, has some DJ information like what we've been talking about? What do you think is the best way? Because, that seems like is that cost prohibitive? Like, it
definitely has some cost to it. Yeah, Kelly. And that's a really good point because that's why I was saying, like, in me talking and working with Colin, like, I understand it's not, it may just be like he hasn't worked through things long enough yet, or, made money to feel like that investment is worth it, whatever the case may be. So yeah, but you can get, you don't have to do what I do, but you could get the same basic end result with one, a single operating drive. So you don't need, a fancy redundant one like I mentioned. You can get a single one, and I think, Keith, maybe $200, $250 now you can get a terabyte or 2 terabyte external.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and yeah, shoot, even depending on how robust you want to get, I just bought what was it? I was just looking at, not so much for DJing. So I might make a different choice, for that stuff. Like I might go for a more robust one, but yeah, I think if you look on Amazon or something, I think you can get like a 3 terabyte external, like Passport, Western Digital or whatever for like 100.
Yeah, look, here's a Western Digital 2 TB for $86.
Yeah.
I have had those before. The only thing is if you drop them, you have to be really careful. You can't drop them at all.
Yeah,
they'll give you a new one, but they won't give you your data back. You're losing it. So.
It's getting pretty, but getting that redundancy is a lot cheaper than it used to be, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, so to answer Kelly's question, without getting into raids at all, which is what you have to get someone into that to do what I do, you know, without getting into that, what I would definitely recommend to somebody is that, you know, you have you might get a shockproof one that's another $50 or something, whatever. But essentially, we're looking at what we're looking at. 2 terabytes. Let's just say it was $150 to get something that's, you know, more robust. You could drop it, whatever. But if you had 2 of those, you're talking $300, and one of those you could have, you know, all your files that you create, for example, would be on that, and that's your production working drive. And then you have your other one is running your time machine, or, you know, if you're on a PC, it would be a different product, but some kind of incremental backup software. You could do the same exact end result that I described in a much larger capacity, or maybe, let's say, higher quality way. You could get that same effective end result for $200 to $300 versus $1,000. So there's the answer, I think, Kelly, to what you were asking. And then the drive that's in your computer, you know, that's only running your software. It's not, you're not storing your files there. You're not keeping things you create, which would be really upsetting if you lost them. They're not on your actual laptop. They're on those external drives. And
that's a pretty fair point too, because you know, in addition to, you know, DJ and, you know, doing music stuff like that, you know, I have a fairly extensive, you know, just media collection in general. And I like to, you know, I use Sonos, and, you know, I have Plex, and, you know, I've got all this stuff that, you know, if I want media in a room, I need to be able to access it. And one of the things that, you know, on some of those setups though, you know, they'll say things like, oh, and make sure to, you know, set your hard drive to never rest, you know, never sleep and stuff like that. I'm like, wait a minute, if it never sleeps, you know, like how, you know, so I definitely have kind of done a little bit of that deeper dive as well to try to figure out, you know, wait, can I, you know, like I just ran across something recently, and I haven't yet tried it, but I thought that I wasn't going to be able to like set my network drives to sleep, you know. And I just happened upon on a forum this guy that had a similar setup to mine that said, oh yeah, no, I found this way to do it, you know. And so that it basically instead of just being awake all the time, it will actually wake up if it gets a ping, you know. And a problem with a lot of those is that, you know, sometimes even though they say, you know, they'll work, they don't, you know, like you try to ping it, like, come on, wake up. So yeah, that's kind of, it's an interesting, you know, weighing the features you want versus, you know, hey, if you keep electronics on all the time, you know, it's going to wear out, you know?
But yeah. And the people that I've helped with that strategy that I explained, whether it's the entry level budget version or somewhere along the way, and trust me, there's $10,000 versions of what I do. So like mine is like $1,000 version, you know, and you can just keep on going. So, you know, and you have to find what works for you from a budget, but you can get into it, like I said, for probably $200 to start doing something that's just definitely better than having everything at risk on maybe your one laptop. You know, many people don't have 2 machines. I get that, right? So, you know, the laptop does everything for them, and there's no problem with that. But, you know, when you think about it, for just an extra $250 or $200, you could have this really good extra peace of mind, because when you haul off to do that gig, you know, you leave that backup drive at home, and in that way, you know, if like you said, Keith, what a pain is it to get, you know, especially if you're in the Mac world. I know the PC folks, if you're interested in doing hardware stuff, you have more ability, but most people don't, you know, anyway. So let's just say you're whether you're PC or Mac, you're kind of in the world of having to take the machine somewhere and have someone else replace the drive. Like that's a lot of time, right? So, you know, if your external drive dies, it's like you dial up Amazon, you got one there the next day, probably free shipping with Amazon Prime, and you just, you know, your time machine back up 45 minutes and you're running again exactly like you were yesterday. So that's, to me, that's a very nice peace of mind kind of thing.
It's funny you mentioned that, because literally I have an iPhone 7 Plus that I just got. The camera stopped being 100% functional, and it wouldn't work on like a restore or that kind of thing. So I didn't know this ahead of time when I opted to do the FedEx, like send me a new phone and I'll send mine back, that I have a job now. I'm not at home, and they won't let you resend it anywhere else, And so Jen and I weren't home during the day, and so I've been trying to get my new phone for the past week. I had to go get a ride from work to like 15 minutes away to get to the FedEx place, because they no, we can't, we have a lockbox. Like, can you get inside our, if I give you the code, you get inside our gate, you put it on my door, No, Apple won't let us do that either. And I'm just like, ugh. So it was a bit frustrating because, when you're sitting there waiting for your new gear and you literally are not able to get it, because like my schedules did not overlap with FedEx, and there was nothing that they could do about it. I was just like, the perils of our geekdom and electronic world,
Try living on a boat.
You're always at risk of sinking.
No, I just mean they won't deliver anything to me.
Oh, right. It's funny. While I was looking at some IMs that were going back and forth, Keith, and somebody said that my buddy Tim, he messaged me and he's like, "I love raids." Raids fun.
But a lot of these.
But Keith, you have a really good point. I'm gonna have to wrap up here and literally go do. It's common. You probably haven't listened to all 17 of these before you, but it's common that my battery either dies or I have to go take care of my dogs. So,
or I have to go to bed.
But what I was gonna say, Keith, I think you have a really good point with, this episode probably more than any of the others we've done has had a lot more very specific advice on product or technique and discussion around this DJ topic. So yeah, I think we'll see about maybe doing something to kind of summarize it.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Whenever you want to do this record label kind of talk, like count me in, round table or however you want to do it, because let me say this. I love music. I think being a DJ is I feel like, aside from maybe NFL quarterbacks or something, I feel like I'm part of the coolest club that exists.
It's pretty
I dig it. I think, I love it. And I love hearing, I just love, talking shop, and hearing what it is about it that other people are really stoked on, or why they do it, or, different paths that people take. And, now that I've DJed 16 years and, I don't know how many years of those where I was thinking I want to be this or that, or how do I do this, or how do I get to that point, and,
right.
And, I mean, a lot of it is you just learn, learn on the fly, learn as you go. And, but having a DJ Tech Tools is great. Having friends or maybe people that know people like us, and also get some cool tips, as well as maybe some entertainment and stories along the way. That's just, I love it. So,
yeah. Well, hey man, aside from today's show content and talking, I meant to thank you for all the Burning Man just connections. And, this was my favorite year. I mean, I've only been 3 times. They've been 3 in a row. And it continues to get better. People ask me if I'm going to keep going for the rest of my life. And I'm like, you know what, as long as it, if it continues to get better, and I feel like it does, by myself kind of adopting more of the sort of gifting without expectation ideology. It does, or it did for this year, I've had my ups and downs with it. I think everybody does. It's a challenging thing to do, both financially and time, and can be mentally and physically. So it's a lot, but this was my favorite. And I wanted to thank you. I think I might have before, but just, you definitely helped me connect a few of my favorite gigs out there this year. And that's just an awesome thing.
Well, you're very welcome. And of course that is, in the burner spirit for sure. Along with just being, it feels good to be able to, hook people up and, in a way that makes, it's just a win-win for everybody. Right. I talked about Fort Knox 5 earlier, and, I've only met Steve a couple times, but, I did have the good fortune of hanging out with John H. out on the playa, several years ago, and Pamela, and that was like a really cool, I wasn't super tight with those guys, but it was a very gratifying and kind of emotional experience, with Queued Up, Jason and Steve coming out, and to be able to, like, help go, guys like that and yourself, like, because it really is, in the bigger picture, probably a lot of us are kind of competitive, and it's a business and it's all these things, but Burning Man really reminds you it's a community. It really is a community.
And it's looking out, because, like, it's one of those things where, like Connie, DJ Icon, who's playing tomorrow or Friday night with us, she, she helped me out a lot, try to connect a few things, and some worked, some didn't, but it doesn't matter if it did or didn't pan out, but the thought was there, and because it's one of those things where, like, people look at Burning Man different ways, of course, but the way that I was brought into it, even though more recently, I still have this mindset of, it's like, it's not really a place for me to go, like, like hunting bookings, and it feels weird to me to do that. So yeah. I value any booking where someone calls me and maybe appreciates music or whatever it is, but in that particular community, I feel for me it's a little bit more like you're almost just sort of at the will of whoever decide, like, kind of, we're your friends or whatever it is in this thing. So anyway, again, I appreciate that, and like Connie this year, and Camp Charlie, of course, who was the camp I've been with for 3 years and is always supporting me.
So, idea for another episode. You could do a whole topic on DJing at Burning Man and the workarounds, the things that you have to go through to play out. That could be a whole other side topic for sure.
Oh boy. We'll space it out. Well, cool, man.
Sounds like a good place to put a bow on it.
Cool, man. Kelly, anything else from you? Any events coming up? Forgot to ask in the beginning. Sorry.
Next Wednesday I'm playing for NYCBC, their transmission show. Anthony Fonseca.
Cool. Good old Anthony.
Awesome. And we didn't discuss it yet, Wes, but hopefully while you're in town, maybe we can grab some sushi or something again.
I think there's an early dinner plan for Friday. I don't know any specifics, but that's word on the street.
All right, word on the street. I'll see if I can hunt you guys down.
So if that works for you, I'll PM you. I'll hit you up, man.
Cool. All right, sounds good. Looking forward to it. Like I say, bring your. I don't know if you have like a DJ sweat towel or something, but you might want to bring one from Monarch, because it is in the basement, and it will get hot and sweaty in there.
I will try. I will bring. I know what I'm going to do.
Do you have any juice recording towel, or that's gonna have
I don't have any of those. I don't have any of the hoorah towels or whatever they call them, but I've got at least 5. Like, I've got average gypsy bandanas, Space Cowboys bandanas, Ripe bandanas. I'm looking at them over here.
I've got
I have Dusty Poon Saloon bandanas. I have bandanas. So I might just bring the Burning Man bandana.
All the bandanas.
Bring them all. Bring them all. You'll probably you're probably just like every 20 minutes or something, just off with another one, put on a dry one,
So much swag, so little time, I guess.
Right. There's another t-shirt.
Stay classy, yo.
Stay classy, yo.
All right, man.